Hello everyone, this is Alan Underwood with codingblocks.net, and in this particular session we're going to walk through a real live debugging session. So AndrewK reached out to us from our Slack channel and was looking for some help because he was getting a JavaScript error in his application, and he was having a hard time pinpointing where it was coming from. And where he was looking at in his code, it looked like the things were happening where he was doing some slicing and some sorting of his array of information, and it turned out that that was not the right area. So I wanted to go through kind of how I found where this was, and maybe this will help somebody else out when they're looking at how to debug a problem, at least in JavaScript in your browser using the Chrome tools. And Firebug and Firefox is also very similar. So first, the problem is it wasn't obvious that there was an issue, because when he would go through and do his testing, he wasn't getting any errors down here. Unfortunately, there had to be a very specific thing that happened, which was you had to click this one particular guy, and it had to be the first time that anybody was clicked on the page. And if that happened, then you got this particular error right here, this cannot read property name of undefined. And so obviously it was kind of hard to track down in the first place because you had to do this one exact thing. And these are the worst kind of bugs, right? Because you think everything's working, everything you tried, and maybe you clicked 5 of these guys or just randomly clicked, and you never thought to try with that one guy. So these are the ones that will drive you absolutely crazy. So I'm going to walk through how I kind of tracked down where the problem was. So the first thing we want to look at right here is, okay, so it's telling us that the error is in logic.js line 210. So you can literally click that right there and it will take you to the line. And because we didn't really get to see what happened, it's great that it gives us this stack trace right here, but without having some sort of context around it, this is just a good starting point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a breakpoint on that line, and I'm going to start this page again. So on Mac, Command R, on Windows, F5 or Control R will get you the same thing. So I'm going to come up here and click this. It'll take me here to the stop point. And let's take a look. So one of the things that I found out about when we were looking at this is this recommended team. This is a global array that basically anybody can touch. And I wanted to point that out because that's one of the reasons why this is hard to debug, because there's a lot of places that are actually touching this particular piece of data. And so it's very difficult to pinpoint exactly where something goes wrong because anything has access to it, anything can change it. And so you literally have just an unlimited number of places where things can go wrong, as opposed to if you had made this like a closure and you only had certain places where you could add, remove, or do various different methods with this array, then that would help you at least pinpoint where the problem was. So just a heads up, if this wasn't global, things probably would have been a little bit easier to go through. But being that said here, now we can look at this and sort of know what's getting ready to happen, right? Because we can look at this array here, and there's 6 elements in the array, and you can see here that the last one is undefined, and that falls in line with what that error was. So we're going to hit F8 here to play, and Chrome has this nice feature where it will sort of just automatically show you what the particular object is as it's running. So in this case, we can say that these all have what we're looking for. Name is what's being used here on this line. So if we F8, 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 so now we're on the 6th item here, and you can see heroes undefined. So obviously undefined.name is going to give you an error because it doesn't exist. So when you do that, we get what we expect. All right, so now that we've shown the problem, let's figure out how we can step backwards and figure this thing out. So the way you typically do it is you walk backwards from where you found the issue. So in this case, what we're going to do, we know that running this is actually going to cause the issue, but what we want to do is we kind of want to step back in time here. So we're in a for each right here, and you can see here's a lambda or an anonymous function. So that's where we were in the call stack. That's the most recent point. If we step back out of that, then we're just inside the main method right here. And we can see there's nothing that happened before this for each, so that's not really all that useful to us. So let's go back a little bit further. All right, so now we're in this method called determine team counters, and that starts up here. But as I said, typically what you want to do is you just want to work backwards, because you can look up here and this is calling a method. There's another lambda right here. Then there's some other things that are happening down here. There's this method call right here. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on throughout this page. And so really what we want to do is we want to find the last point in time that something was good. And the way that I typically do it is I work my way backwards, because there's usually something that is going to cause the problem somewhere along the way. And, you know, luck have it, maybe you do the a binary search, right? And you just come up here in the middle and you put a breakpoint. You can work at it that way. It depends on how you want to do, and that's not a terrible thing. Like if this had been a huge method, probably that is what you do, is you come up here, dump out the console. So actually let's do that. Let's work through it like that. So up here, I'll put the breakpoint, and I'm basically just going to refresh the page again and stop when we get there. Okay, so we know that it was this recommended team thing, right? So as we can see right here, if you just mouse over it, there's nothing in it right now. Okay, so maybe this breakpoint was a little too early on. But just so that we can have a little bit of information here, let's add that watch. So again, this is a global variable. So all right, so we have an array of 0 right here. So cool. Let's hit F10 to step over, or step into. Okay, that still have an array of 0. That's fine. Still 0, 0, F10ing. Oh, check it out. So now we actually have something right here. We have this get top 6 heroes. So that seems to be populating this recommended tree, which it's assigning it directly. All right, cool. So we know where it got populated, but let's see what's in this thing. And you can do it like this. You can, hover over it and then, mouse over these and click them. But I'll show you a neat little trick in Chrome that is amazing. So let's do this. Let's do a console.log, or not log.table, and let's do recommended team. And check this out. This gives you a nicely formatted table. And it'll show you down here that there was an array of 6. You can go through and inspect the data if you want. But you can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is a much nicer way to look at this information, right? So you can kind of see what's going on all the way down through here. So that's beautiful. We have the data. It looks like there's no undefined in here. And chance has it that there's really not much else to happen in this method. So really at this point, if we go down to this next line, we're pretty sure that this is where the problem's going to be, because there's really nowhere else for it to go before it hits this other method where the error was showing up. So we'll hit F10 here, and let's take a look now and do a console.log or console.table on this, and check it out. Look, there's only 5 records showing up in this table, and in the data there, the last one is undefined. So there's definitely something going on in this adjust for meta. So what I'm going to do now is put a breakpoint there. I'm going to refresh the page. And now I will click this guy again. I'm just going to hit F8 to play. And now I'm here. So now what I want to do is I want to step into. And you can do that by clicking this right here. I usually use the function keys because I do it enough. So I'm going to hit F11. And so now I'm in here. So now really what we want to do is we want to keep this thing expanded, because the easiest way to track what's going on here is just to see as this thing updates. So unlike the console down here that's not going to update these objects, up here we will see the live stuff. So I'm going to hit F10 right here. My object's still in place, and actually I know it's this 5th one that gets blown away, so let's just keep that thing expanded. So that one's good. We're good. It does a console.log. We're going to step over that. Really doesn't look like anything's happening there. Not really. Doesn't look like. This is just checking positions within data. So that looks like that's really harmless. So let's hit F10 there. That's a method call. I have no idea what it might actually be doing, but let's just hit F10. Oh, check it out. It looks like running that thing right there now killed our undefined. We've got an undefined record there. So there might be a way in Chrome to step back, and I probably should have looked at that before I started recording this video. I know in Visual Studio, if you're doing like something, you can typically rewind the playhead somewhere. I don't know how to do that here, and if I do, I might just make another video on it. So I'm going to refresh. We know that the problem is happening inside here now. So let's just hit that, reload it, and we'll quickly get back to it by hitting F8, F8. Okay, so here we are. We're back there. I'm going to hit F11 to go into this method again. All right, so we have this expanded. We know there's data up there. So I can tell you one thing. Anytime that I see something going on that is a lambda, typically what I'll do is I'll put a breakpoint inside it anyways, because if you hit F10 on this, it's just going to skip over the entire thing. And we know that there's probably something going on either here or here, right? So I'm basically just going to hit F10, 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 and just keep stepping through this thing. And you can see that my object up here still has data in it. So all is good there. And it really doesn't, I don't really think anything can happen right here, because this is an array that was defined right here, and it's just pushing a new item into it. So you know what? I'm going to skip that because that doesn't really look like it matters. So let's hit F10 and get down here. All right, so now we're inside this loop. And this is where we need to figure out where things start happening. So let's just hit F10 and start going through this. And remember, we're going to keep an eye on this up here. So this is calling get sorted roll. Doesn't look like that's really doing anything. Oh, but check this out. Look right here. We have recommended team. That's that global object that we're inspecting up here. So maybe all we need to do is put a breakpoint on this thing. We're going to hit F8 to get in there. And then we'll hit F8 again. So it's still there. That looks good. Oh, but check it out. Running that one time killed the item. So now then, let's go ahead and restart that and see what's going on in here. All right, so F8, F8 to play, and we're just going to go back. So we've already set a breakpoint here. Okay, so check it out. We're back to this point now, and the recommended team all looks good right now, as we can see. But you can see here, let's look at what this I is, right? So I is 5, and it looks like what they're doing is he's going through all the items in this array that he knows to be a length of 6. So he's basically saying start at the last index, which is 5, and then as long as the index is greater than or equal to 0, keep going, right? And so it's going from the last position to the first position. So here we're saying, hey, take whatever that last member is, which kind of makes sense because it's number 5 that we see dying here, and it's going to call this get hero thing with the actual name. So let's see, what is this actual name that is on this guy right here? So roll heroes. Let's do this. Roll heroes. And let's add this to the watch. Let's expand this out. Okay, so the name that's being passed into this guy is soldier:76, and that's using the actual name. All right, so let's F11 into this method to see what's going on. All right, and so here we have another method that's being called, and this is saying the hero data, which, what is that? It looks like it's another, let's go ahead and dump that out. Console.table. Hero data. Okay, so this looks like this might be a list of all the heroes that are on the page, right? So just browsing through it, it looks like we have name and actual name. And, just trying to get a feel for it. One thing that I see here is this name right here, Soldier 76, does not match the actual name of Soldier 76. And that looks to be the only one that is that way. Now, if there was a ton of data, you probably wouldn't look at it and waste the time on it. And if you didn't know about this console.table, most definitely you wouldn't have gone through every one of these and seen that, right? So this is just one way that I kind of noticed it, but it might not have been the perfect thing. But what I do know is if I go back to the call stack and I look at this, I know that it was passing in actual name, right? And then if I come back to this get hero call, check out what it's actually comparing it to. It's checking the name versus the actual name, which was passed in as _hero here. So that tells me, wait a second, we're not comparing apples to apples. And that falls in line with what we saw right here, because now, of course, that's not going to match. And this right here is not really telling you, hey, if nothing comes back or nothing's found, throw an error or anything. This is basically saying, hey, we're pretty confident we're going to find something, because we're going to say, hey, return me the first element that comes back where the name matches. So he totally expected for this to work every single time. And if it hadn't been for the fact that this one particular actual name didn't actually match the name, then that probably would have happened. So let's put this in here and let's F10 into it and let's look at this. So check that out. This is going to loop through every single item in the array. So if we went through and we looked at all of them that came through, so let's say that we hit F8, F8, F8. So, I mean, this could only happen 21 times. So you could totally do this and it wouldn't be that bad. But there was Soldier 76, but you saw the name on it did not match that. And so it's still going through the array here. And when it gets done with this thing, it's basically going to have nothing to compare it to. Because there was no data that came back in that array. So trying to reference index 0 of this filter function is going to give you back nothing. So really, at that point, I think it's fairly obvious what needs to happen here is if we go in, and fortunately Chrome will let us do this, which is really fun. Let's go back to... and I'll show you a cool little trick here. I think on Windows, it's Control Open. On Mac, it's Command Open. Or no, let's do Command Shift O. And we will say Get Hero. Oh, it's not there. It's in Data. I'm sorry. So if I do Command Shift O here, say Get Hero, and we know it was this one down here, that'll give you a list of all the methods in there, so it's easy to get to it. So in this case, we know that we either need to change where actual name was or what was passed in. And I think what he wants is he wants the name to match, not the actual name. So in this case, let's see, adjust for meta is where we started. That's not it. That's not it. Because I set these breakpoints, I can quickly get to them. So verify one of each role, logic.js. All right, so this is where it is. So instead of actual name, we want name right here. So let's try this now and see what happens. And if I remember right, okay, so it didn't keep it, but we're going to change this just to see. And you'll notice these breakpoints are kind of grayed now because it's like, hey, we know something changed here. But let's click it, and you'll notice the page is yellow because it knows that it changed. Adjust for meta. We're just going to hit F8 to run through the entire thing and see what happens. Oh, that didn't work. What did I do? Let's go back here. Oops. Well, that's interesting. Let's try that again and see what happens. This is always the fun part about live debugging, right? So Let's change that to name. And let's give this another shot. This time, instead of skipping over it so fast, we'll actually stop there and see what happened. Oh, okay, check it out. It's I think I changed it in the wrong place. That needs to change. Oh, and it won't let me do it here. Interesting. So let's do this. Let's open up Visual Studio Code and just try it out. Let's make the change and see if we can fix it here. And I do like me some Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to go to open and we'll go to my downloads, Overwatch, and we'll just open this entire thing. All right, so let's find the JS, and he's got data right there. Actually, it was get hero. So let's find get hero. So this looks like where the problem was. Let's change that to name. All right, and now let's start over without messing around with Chrome's internal state and see what happens. So if I click this thing and I go back, and let's get back to the point. All right, so right here is where we know we want to be looking at this. It's funny, sometimes the mouse over works there, sometimes it doesn't. But here we can see that the actual name's that, but let's see what the name is. So let's grab that, and we'll just add another one here. All right, so cool, Soldier 76. So that's what should come into here. Let's F11 into it. And so cool, it looks like the name got passed correctly because that's what it was up there. And so now, instead of really, I'm going to do a Shift F11, which will basically return out of this method. So now here we can see, check it out, look, that is still populated. Before, as soon as this line was called, it killed the other one. So we've solved the problem here, or it looks like we have. So let's hit F8 and let's let this thing finish out its rendering, and check it out, the error is gone. And now we have his recommended team here. So I hope what you get out of this is if you start with the error that is dumped out at the bottom and you start stepping your way backwards through the stack trace, you'll eventually get to the point to where you can pinpoint where the problem is. Again, also the global variables kind of throws a monkey wrench into this because there's too many things that have their hands in it. And so that can make things really difficult to debug. But as you can see, we were able to do it, and hopefully you learned a little something here with the the console.log recommended team, because that does that. Or if you do the console.table, there's some cool things that you can do in the debugger that can really make your life a little bit easier. So very cool, right? We were able to step through the code and figure out exactly what was going wrong. So I wanted to give a big thank you to AndrewK for allowing me to record this and share it with you guys. You know, a lot of people don't like to show their code out to others, but doing this I think is extremely valuable because this was a real problem that he had. This wasn't some contrived example. This was a real world issue. So this is kind of how I step through things when I'm thinking about them. And now I'm going to have to go look up some other Chrome debug things that you can do, because I know there's ways to rewind in time, because that would have saved a few refreshes on the page. But hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you got something out of it. If this helped you out, please do leave a thumbs up below, because that will help us, get additional subscribers and help other people out in their coding endeavors. And share with anybody that that might find this interesting. There's a share button down below. And definitely head over to www.codingblocks.net, where you can find our podcast, all our social links. And this question came up on Slack. I highly encourage you to get involved in the Coding Blocks community by heading to www.codingblocks.net/Slack. All this information's in the description below, so if you'd rather just click on a link rather than type it in, please head down there and do it. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll be back soon with some more content. Thanks again. Bye.